Hare Krishna, dear devotees.
Hare Krishna, everyone.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, welcome. So welcome, Mataji, in this batch for teaching Bhagavad Gita chapter 8 to 12 and some part of 7th chapter. We are very fortunate, Mataji, that you are here. So devotees, we have with us Her Grace Sita Rani Mataji. So I'll just introduce Mataji briefly. So Mataji is highly qualified individual in terms of material studies. If we see material side also, Mataji is bachelor in BA. Mataji has done BA honors in economics from SRCC, which is the most prestigious college of Delhi University, and then MA economics from Delhi School of Economics, and Masters in Oracle Financial from Oracle University. And Mataji's work experience is also very fascinating and very amazing. Mataji has worked in Mitsui Banking, Sumitomo Mitsui Banking Corporation in New York, and many other companies, many other big companies in New York as IT project manager. And Mataji practicing devotional life since from past 17 years, and now past 14 years Mataji is actively engaged and involved in congregational preaching, teaching Srila Prabhupada books, and Mataji is also certified marriage counselor and mentor. Mataji has completed Bhakti śāstrī from VIHE in 2011, Bhakti Vaibhav from VIHE, and MI Bhakti Vedanta also from VIHE, BSTTC, of course BSTTC from MI and TTC from VIHE. So Mataji, I, if I'm not wrong, you are the first Mataji who has done Bhakti Vedanta. You were the first lady. Is it, if I'm correct?
No, that's not true. There are others as well.
Okay. But it is the first batch, right? It is the first Bhakti Vedanta.
It's the second batch from VIHE.
Okay, second batch. So Mataji has done the Bhakti Vedanta course, which is like PhD in the śāstrī courses. So we are very fortunate that we have Mataji with us, highly qualified individual, speak both materially and spiritually. So we would like to thank Mataji by one time chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Thank you very much, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji, for your kind words. And I would ask for blessings of you all so that something worthwhile can be spoken today. And I'll start with some Mangalacharan verses. Om Agyana Timirandhasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Tadati Padantikam Yasya Prasada Dadgyopi Sadhya Sarva Bhaktitam Rajesa Shri Chaitanya Devo Me Bhagavan Samprasidatu Vancha Kartubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhya Eva Cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advait Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Presthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesh Shunyavadi Paschate Deshatarine. Okay, so I was told that I'm supposed to start from 725. Is that correct? 7 chapter 25th verse. Yes, no, maybe. No recollection where we left off last time? Does anyone remember where we are at?
Yes, Harshita Mataji, go on.
Prabhuji, in my notes, I have written till verse number 21. So,
I can't hear you. Is that my system issue or others can hear her well?
Hare Krishna Mataji. Yes, Mataji. Till 25, Prabhuji has covered.
Okay. So we have to start from 25th, right? So just to do a quick recap of what has happened in chapter 7, would anybody like to volunteer? What have we done in chapter 7 till now? What's happened in chapter 7? You can raise your hand and then we can take it from there. Harshita, were you trying to raise your hand? No?
Hare Krishna Maji, yeah.
Hi.
Pranam.
Hi.
Am I audible? Am I audible?
Yes, go ahead.
Maji, the chapter begins by when Krishna is stressing the importance of hearing. So, and in the purport also, Srila Prabhupada cites verses from the Bhagavatam which tell how the process of hearing gradually purifies us. And then Krishna begins to tell knowledge of the material world and the superior and inferior energies and how he is the essence of everything and what kind of people take shelter of him and what kind of people never take shelter of him, who is most dear to him.
Okay. And from 20 to 25, he talks about those, earlier he talks about 4 categories of people who do not surrender to him and 4 categories who surrender to him. And from 20 to 25, he talks about other category of people, 2 other category of people who surrender to him, but not properly. So he talks about first the demigod worshippers. And after that, he's starting to talk about the impersonalists. So in the 24th verse, we see that he's already talking about the impersonalists, that they do surrender, but they surrender to my effulgence. They do not surrender to me as a person. So that's not proper surrender. It is some form of surrender, but it is not proper. Similarly, demigods worshippers, they surrender to demigods. And Krishna explains that all the power to give benedictions, all the power to give boons, it actually comes from him only. He is the source of all the power behind the demigods. But people who approach the demigods do not realize that. They don't understand that actually everything is ultimately coming from Krishna. So they do surrender to demigods. So in a way it is surrender, but it is not proper surrender. So now we can start from verse number 25. Now, do you have like a reading order? Is that how it works? Do you people have a reading order? Like who'll read the verse? Is there a list? Or anybody can just read, whoever feels like? How does it work?
Hi Krishna, Pranam Mataji.
Okay, go ahead. Whoever wants to read.
Mataji, you can call names and then members can read.
Okay, so whoever wants to read can raise your hands and then I'll call you one by one. I don't want to call out on those people who don't want to read. So you can raise your hands and I will then call out your names one after another. Okay. Kanchavarna Gaurangi. Is that your name? Wow, nice. Very nice.
Kanchanavarna Gaurangi.
Kanchanavarna Gaurangi. Very nice name. Go ahead.
Which verse might I have to read from?
I think we are starting from verse number 25.
Yes, ma'am. So I'm supposed to read the verse, translation, and purport.
How do you do in other? What was the thing that you're following in rest of your classes?
Usually, the teacher who's taking the class, they recite the shloka,
Okay.
and some of them read, and then we are supposed to read the translation and purport.
Okay, so let's do it that way. Okay. Naham prakasha sarvasva yoga maya samavrita muro yam na bijanati loko mamajamavyayam.
Translation. I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them, I am covered by my internal potency, and therefore they do not know that I am unborn and infallible. Fourth quote. It may be argued that since Krishna was visible to everyone when he was present on this earth, then how can it be said that he is not manifest to everyone? But actually, he was not manifest to everyone. When Krishna was present, there were only a few people who could understand him to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the assembly of Kurus, when Shishupal spoke against Krishna as being elected president of the assembly, Bhishma supported him and proclaimed him to be the supreme god. Similarly, the Pandavas and a few others knew that he was the supreme, but not everyone. He was not revealed to the non-devotees and the common man. Therefore, in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that, but for his pure devotees, all men consider him to be like themselves. He was manifest only to his devotees as the reservoir of all pleasure, but to others, to unintelligent non-devotees, he was covered by his internal potency. In the prayers of Kunti in the Srimad Bhagavatam 1.8.19, it is said that the Lord is covered by the curtain of Yog Maya, and thus ordinary people cannot understand him. This Yog Maya curtain is also confirmed in the Ishopanishad mantra 15, in which the devotee prays, Hiranyayena patrena satyasya pihitam mukham tattvam Bhushan apavrinu satya dharmaya drishtaye. O my Lord, you are the maintainer of the entire universe, and devotional services to you is the highest religious principle. Therefore, I pray that you will also maintain me. Your transcendental form is covered by the Yog Maya. The Brahma Jyoti is the covering of the internal potency. May you kindly remove this glowing effulgence that impedes my seeing your Satchidananda Vigraha, your eternal form of bliss and knowledge. The Supreme Personality of Godhead in his transcendental form of bliss and knowledge is covered by the internal potency of the Brahma Jyoti, and the less intelligent impersonalists cannot see the Supreme on this account. Also, in the Srimad Bhagavatam 10.14.7, there is this prayer by Brahma. O Supreme Personality of Godhead, O Super Soul, O Master of all mystery, who can calculate your potency and pastimes in this world? You are always expanding your internal potency, and therefore no one can understand you. Learned scientists and learned scholars can examine the atomic constitution of the material world, or even of the planets, but still they are unable to calculate your energy and potency, although you are present before them. The Supreme Personality of Godhead, Lord Krishna, is not only unborn, but also avyaya, inexhaustible. His eternal form is bliss and knowledge, and his energies are all inexhaustible.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Okay, so here he's been talking about the impersonalist from past, I think, 2 shlokas. 1 shloka, 24th, he talked about the impersonalist, and he's continuing that I am not visible to those people who do not approach me in a proper way. And what is the proper way? Approaching him as a person through bhakti yoga. So he's saying that I am never manifest to the foolish, naham prakasha sarvasva, that I do not manifest myself. And Prabhupada, in one of his lectures, he talks about that there are 2 kinds of Maya, Yoga Maya and Mahamaya. So the conditioned souls are covered by Mahamaya, and Krishna assumes the covering of Yoga Maya. So many of his pastimes, you see that he is covered by the Yoga Maya. Now, one may think that Yoga Maya is able to cover Krishna, but actually, Yoga Maya is only able to cover Krishna when it is his desire. Otherwise, she does not really have the power to cover him. He's Swarat. It's according to his Ichha Shakti that the Yoga Maya is able to cover him. If he wants to perform a particular pastime, or he does not want to reveal his form to others, and those are the times when the Yoga Maya covers him. But Krishna reserves the right to whom he wants to become visible. to whom he wants to show himself. So because he's Swarat, and that's why he's saying that I do not really reveal myself to those who are foolish and unintelligent. I don't reveal. And we can see that in so many of his pastimes. We can see even in Mahabharata that so many people were assembled on that battlefield, but not everybody, even though they were physically seeing Krishna, but they could not understand that this is the Supreme Personality of Godhead because he's covered by his internal potency. They thought of him as an ordinary living person, just like themselves. They thought Krishna, maybe he has some extra powers. Maybe he's, a little bit better than me, but he's not the Supreme Personality of Godhead because that was Krishna's desire. He did not want to reveal himself. And the only thing that actually attracts him to reveal himself is the devotion, bhakti of a devotee. That is what attracts him to reveal himself. Otherwise, to unintelligent and those who are non-devotees, he remains hidden behind his internal potency. So that's what Prabhupada is talking about in this. And then he is also quoting this verse from Ishopanishad, which kind of proves that that the Lord is always covered by this Brahma Jyoti, by his effulgence. And the devotee, when he approaches him, he requests that I'm not able to see you. This effulgence is covering you completely. I want to see you. Please reveal yourself to me. And then by his own mercy, Krishna reveals himself to his devotee. So this is what Prabhupada is talking about, that the impersonalists, they are actually approaching his Brahma Jyoti. They don't approach Krishna as a person. And the devotee knows that beyond that Brahma Jyoti, there is a person. This Brahma Jyoti is actually originating from a person. So in that sense, the impersonalists, when they approach Krishna, they are doing it in improper way because they don't realize that Krishna is a person behind that Brahma Jyoti. He is the source of that Brahma Jyoti. They are very content just to approach the Brahma Jyoti. So Prabhupada is here explaining that. And that's why Krishna is calling such people as foolish and unintelligent, because they don't realize what is his real persona. They don't realize that. They think Brahma Jyoti is all in all. So that's why he does not reveal himself to such people. Now I see 2 raised hands. I hope they are for reading and not, if you have a question, you can just unmute yourself and ask, or if you have a comment. Okay. Okay, so next, is it going to work better if I ask you to read the verse and translation? Then I can read portions of the purport. So that way, whatever I want to emphasize on, then we can just read that portion of the purport rather than reading the whole purport. Will that work? Okay. So Divya Leela, you can read 26th.
Yes. Thank you, Hare Krishna. Vedaham samatitani vartamanani cha Arjuna bhavishyani cha bhutani mam tu vedana kaschana. Translation: O Arjuna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, I know everything that has happened in the past, all that is happening in the present, and all things that are yet to come. I also know all living entities, but me no one knows.
Yeah, now after the last verse, somebody may just question that, oh, okay, so you are also covered just like us. So Krishna is making it very clear here that I am not covered like ordinary jivas. I'm very different from an ordinary jiva. I know the past, I know the present, and I know what is going to come in the future. Now, I have a question here that if Krishna knows the future, how does it work with our free will? We all have a free will, right? We can decide what course we want to take. So that is our decision. Then how Krishna knows everything in the future? Kanchana Varna, Gaurangi, you want to answer that?
Yes, Matthew, I would like to try. Krishna knows the proclivities of the jivas. Like if the jiva is given the options, then what is the tendency of the jiva to do? Like just like the parents, they know that if the child is given some options, the child will opt for this. So similarly, Krishna knows our desires. So Krishna knows that how the jiva will act to certain situation, and circumstances are fixed. Only our reaction is
may vary according to our free will, and that too Krishna knows that according to our desire, this is what we do.
Very good. If somebody wants to add to this.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Mataji, maybe as per our current desires, there's a particular future which Krishna knows. By our free will, if we make different choices, if we change our desire, then as per that new desire, the future is changing, then Krishna knows what that new future will be if we have those desires.
Okay. Mandaleshwar Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, Mataji. Exactly, Krishna has given a freedom for everybody. He don't want to intersect in his freedoms. He should, because he has given because a human person got a body because for freedom, free. If you want to come to me, you can come to me. Otherwise, you can stay there also. That freedom has given, and he's seeing what he's watching, what we are doing, that observing what we are acting.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, so you have pretty much answered the question. So Krishna knows all the permutation combinations. You know, he knows that if we choose this, then this is going to be the result. If we choose that, then that is going to be the result. It's inconceivable how he knows all the possible permutation combinations of our free will. You know, sometimes we act according to our nature, and sometimes we act very impulsively, completely different from our given nature. And Krishna knows that if this jiva actually chooses to act like this, what will be the future outcome? So that is why he's saying that I know what has happened in the past, I know what is happening in the present, and I also know what is going to happen in the future. So he's making a very clear distinction. He's saying that I am not like an ordinary jiva who's covered by Mahamaya. I'm different. And then Prabhupada in the purport, he talks about, this is in the second paragraph, he talks about that he is in the middle of the paragraph. Krishna knows every living entity, but because he's situated in every living being's heart as a super soul. But despite his presence in every living entity as super soul and his presence as the supreme personality of Godhead, the less intelligent, even if able to realize the impersonal Brahman, cannot realize Sri Krishna as the supreme person. Certainly, the transcendental body of Sri Krishna is not perishable. So we read this even in the 4th chapter, where he says that I remember past, I remember everything that is happening, and I also know what's going to happen in the future. And that's when, that was when Arjuna asked this question that, you know, you just came with me, your same age as me. How have you given this knowledge to Vivaswan? How did you do that? I don't understand. And that's when he said that you have had many births. I have had many births, but since I do not change my body, I remember each and every birth. I remember, I have the memory of each and every birth. And that's what Prabhupada is saying. He's saying that he's just like the sun and Maya is like a cloud. In the material world, we can see that there is the sun and that there are clouds and different stars and planets. The clouds may cover all these in the sky temporarily, but this covering is only apparent to our limited vision. The sun, moon, and stars are not actually covered. Similarly, Maya cannot cover the Supreme Lord. By his internal potency, he is not manifest to the less intelligent class of men. So Prabhupada is using an analogy to explain to us that just like in the sky, there are different, there is a sun, there is a moon, there are different stars. And sometimes we see that the cloud has covered. We can't see the sun, we can't see the moon, we can't see the sky and the stars. But that's only a temporary situation, and it is covering our eyes. We are not able to see, but they still exist. They are still there. And if you cross beyond those clouds, you can see them very clearly. And all of us have had this experience. If you take a flight and you go to a place which is cloudy, and the moment you cross the cloud, you can see the sun shining, but from the ground, you were not able to see that sun because it was covered by the clouds. So the sun is existing, but because of that temporary covering, one is not able to see. So similarly, for those people to whom Krishna does not want to reveal himself, they are covered by a curtain of Maya. And he hides behind that curtain of Maya. He does not reveal himself. Okay, so we can move forward. If you have a question, you can raise your hand and we can discuss it. Otherwise, we'll do. Anandita Janava Mataji, you have a question or you are volunteering to read? Okay, go ahead.
इच्छाद्वेष समुत्थेन द्वन्द्वमोहेन भारत सर्वभूतानि सम्मोहं सर्गे यान्ति परन्तप. O Sian of Bharata, O conqueror of the four, all living entities born into delusion, bewildered by dualities arisen from desire and hate.
Thank you. So 26 to 30th is the last section of this chapter. You know, we discussed different sections. This is the last section of this chapter where Krishna talks about how a jiva is deluded by Maya and how he comes to the platform of devotional service. He talks about that delusion by Maya and also transition to becoming a devotee. So this is what is going to be talked about in these verses. So he's talking about how a jiva who's born into delusion, bewildered by dualities arisen from desire and hate. And we'll see this particular concept is prevalent throughout Bhagavad Gita, where he talks about dualities. It starts from second chapter, and pretty much every chapter you'll see that Krishna cautions against these dualities. And many times he warns us that these dualities actually keep us away from realizing what is the reality of a soul. These dualities arise because of material existence. And even we'll see in the upcoming 12th chapter as well, that he'll talk about that a devotee who's above this duality is very, very dear to me. And even in this chapter, we saw that from 16th to 19th verse, he talked about jnanis, and he said that the jnani is above these dualities. So here he's speaking about that those who are conditioned, how they become conditioned, because they get trapped into the dualities of this material world. And Prabhupada says the real constitutional position of the living entity is that of subordination to the Supreme Lord, who is pure knowledge. When one is deluded into separation from this pure knowledge, he becomes controlled by the illusory energy. Krishna bhuliya jiva bhoga vancha kare, pashate maya tare, jhapatiya dhare. The moment a conditioned soul forgets Krishna, immediately he comes under the purview of the material energy. Immediately Maya catches hold of him. Jhapatiya dhare. She immediately catches hold of him. And Prabhupada is saying that he becomes controlled by the illusory energy and cannot understand the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And the illusory energy is manifested in the duality of desire and hate. So there are so many dualities in this material world. And he's saying that a devotee does not desire anything material, and he does not hate anything material. He is equipoised. He is equipoised in both the conditions. And he's saying, due to desire and hate, the ignorant person wants to become one with the Supreme Lord and envies Krishna as the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Yeah, so desire is what? That I also want to be the Supreme Lord. I also want to be the Supreme Lord. The reason impersonalists want to merge into Krishna or his Brahma Jyoti is because they want to become Krishna. Their desire is to become Krishna. So they want to merge in his Brahma Jyoti. And hate is what? That they don't want to acknowledge his existence. These are like basically atheists or even Mayavadis who think that Krishna has taken this temporary form, and I don't have that form right now because I'm covered by Maya. But as soon as this covering of Maya goes away, there's going to be no difference between me and Krishna. So this is the envy of Krishna. This is deeply rooted in envy of Krishna. And then Prabhupada says, pure devotees who are not deluded or contaminated by desire and hate can understand that Lord Shri Krishna appears by his internal potencies. But those who are deluded by duality and nescience think that the Supreme Personality of Godhead is created by material energies. So these are the people who don't want to acknowledge that he is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is beyond us. They think that he is also created by Maya, just like you and I are. He is also made up of matter, because a conditioned soul thinks of himself as non-different from matter. A conditioned soul thinks that I am matter, and he thinks Krishna is also created by the material energy. Such deluded persons symptomatically dwell in dualities of honor and dishonor, misery and happiness, woman and man, good and bad, pleasure and pain, and thinking, this is my wife, this is my house, I'm the master of this house, I'm the husband of this wife. These are dualities of delusion. So this I'm sure it sounds familiar, that Krishna says many times that he talks about devotee who's properly situated. He sometimes talks about those who are liberated. They're above the platform of dualities. They don't care about dishonor and honor. Why? Because they understand that they are all these dualities are connected to the body, this physical body. Soul cannot experience honor or dishonor. It is experienced by the subtle body, which is a covering on the soul. Misery and happiness is in the material world has nothing to do with the soul. It is to do with the subtle body. And woman and man, these are distinctions of the gross body. And good and bad is again, could be distinction of gross body or could be distinction of subtle body. Pleasure and pain. All these things are concerned with the material existence, the bodily, material body. So he's saying that most of the living entities who are conditioned are bewildered by dualities which are arising from desire and hate. Desire to become one with Krishna, or hate him for being the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Okay, let's move forward. Harshita?
Hare Krishna. येषां त्वन्तगतं पापं जनानां पुण्यकर्मणां ते द्वन्द्वमोहनिर्मुक्ता भजन्ते मां दृढव्रताः. Persons who have acted piously in previous lives and in this life, and whose sinful actions are completely eradicated, are freed from the dualities of delusion, and they engage themselves in my service with determination.
Thank you. So here Krishna is saying that persons who have acted piously in previous lives and who in this life and whose sinful reactions are completely eradicated, they engage themselves in my service with determination. So if any one of us has read Madhurya Kadambini or any such scripture, we come to know that Bhakti is not dependent on these things. Bhakti is not really dependent on pious or sinful reactions. Bhakti is independent of all this. So how do we really understand this shloka? Where Krishna is saying that those who have acted piously, that would seem that a person who is a punyatma, who has done different kind of charities or acted piously, now in this life, all his sinful actions are eradicated and he is able to engage in service with determination. How do we understand that? Does piety lead to bhakti? Yes or no? How many think that piety leads to bhakti? Raise your hand, please. That if you've done a lot of charity in your past life, if you've done a lot of good things, helped different people, helped open some schools, open some hospitals, you can get bhakti in this life. How many people think that there's a connection? So what is Krishna trying to say here?
Is he talking about spiritual piety, the Sukriti?
Maybe, maybe not. So the Acharyas explain that. Anandita Mataji, you want to say something?
Yeah, Mataji, the pious activity which is mentioned here is Bhaktonunmukhi Sukriti.
Bhakti Unmukhi Sukriti, yes, but also the the acharyas explain that those who are pious, those who act piously, so these preachers are naturally drawn towards those who are pious. Is it true? When you go for preaching and you see that somebody is very inclined to come to the temple, they come to the temple and they, give some, they give some dan in the hundi, or they hang around in the temple. So naturally, a preacher would like to preach to such a person, or a preacher would like to go to such a person and tell them about Krishna. And also because if you are pious, then you are in higher modes. You'll not be in lower modes. So it is easier for you to understand transcendental knowledge. It is easier for you to understand the science of Krishna because you are either in goodness mostly and passion, or passion and a little bit of goodness, but you'll be in higher modes, right? So then it's easier for a person to approach, easier for a devotee to approach such a person and tell him or her about Krishna. So when Krishna is saying this, that he's actually talking about how easy it is for a pious person to come to Krishna consciousness compared to a person who's very sinful. And I'm sure if any of you are preaching, this must have been your experience too, that people who are sinful, who are addicted to, bad habits, it's very difficult to bring them to Krishna consciousness. It is not impossible, but it is difficult. But a person who's, who's generally in mode of goodness, or generally who is satisfied and who likes to come to the temple, who likes to do all these kind of things, get up early in the morning, it's easier to preach to such people. So the acharyas explain that pious persons are qualified to take to devotional service not because of their piety, but because their piety attracts the devotee, a pure devotee's mercy. That piety is attractive to a pure devotee. And it is that mercy of a pure devotee that destroys the sin and establishes faith in bhakti. Because when a pure devotee sees that this person is pious, then he bestows mercy. And by the potency of that mercy, the sins are destroyed. And one can take to bhakti and one can establish faith in bhakti. And what happens? Then one becomes firm in one's vows and he gains the determination. One acquires that determination. And a very wonderful example of this is Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada created a revolution in the life of pious, impious, everybody. Right? He said that I created your good fortune. You had no qualification at all, but I created your good fortune. That happened by the mercy of a pure devotee. So when Krishna says that, so he's actually referring to that. And Prabhupada says, those eligible for elevation to the transcendental position are mentioned in this verse. For those who are sinful, atheistic, foolish, and deceitful, it is very difficult to transcend the duality of desire and hate. Only those who have passed their lives in practicing the regulative principles of religion, who have acted piously, and who have conquered sinful reactions, can accept devotional service and gradually rise to the pure knowledge of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then Prabhupada says, this elevation is possible in Krishna consciousness in the association of pure devotees. For in the association of great devotees, one can be delivered from delusion. So just like Prabhupada casts his widely merciful glance, purifying glance on everybody, and the good fortune arose. Their good fortune arose. They all came to bhakti. They all were able to accept the process of devotional service. And then Prabhupada says in the second paragraph that if one actually wants to be liberated, he must render service to the devotees. Mahat sevam dwaram ahur vimukte, that without serving the a mahat, a pure devotee of the Lord, the doors for liberation do not get opened. They are opened only when one serves the Mahat, a pure devotee. But one who associates with materialistic people is on the path leading to the darkest region of existence. And then Prabhupada towards the end says that all the devotees of the Lord traverse this earth just to recover the conditioned souls from their delusion. So what's the business of a devotee? The business of a devotee is to give Krishna consciousness to others. And then he says that unless one is reinstated in his own constitutional position, it is not possible to understand the Supreme Personality or to be fully engaged in his transcendental loving service with determination. Okay. Yes, Anandita Janva Mataji, you wanted to say something?
Yeah, Mataji, I have 2 questions. Like here, first, you mentioned that those who are pious, you rightly said that it's easier to approach them and they take up Krishna consciousness very fast. And the sinful reactions get eradicated just because of the mercy of the pure devotees. Like a person on a Kanishta platform like me will approach a person and they take up Krishna consciousness just because I've seen, this is my experience, and recently I was sharing with you that I've seen in my classes that those who have lolium, and that they're pious, they took it very fast. I need not, whatever philosophy was given, they took it. But others, though they were pious, but it's very hard to take up. So here the question, my question is that a person, Kanishta person, Adhikari like me, if I approach, they come and they take up Krishna consciousness, but by the mercy of pure devotees like Guru Maharaj and all, then their sins are eradicated, right? So the second thing, then again, here we are speaking about the pious persons, but persons, acharyas like Srila Prabhupada and many other acharyas in our movement, they deliver so many impious persons also. So it's by their causeless mercy. They are not pious at all, but just by giving them pious mercy. So how can we understand the shloka in their context?
See, it's easier. It's not that a devotee does not approach those who are impious. A devotee approaches everyone. But who are you first attracted to? Those who are pious, those who come to the temple. Yes, Prabhupada went around and attracted everyone. But who was he most merciful to? Those who were coming to his classes, those who were coming to hear from him, those who were coming to get his association, or those who were joining him for kirtan. So it is not that they don't, even say for a spiritual master, he is in the temple. And who is he most likely to approach and talk to? People who are coming to the temple. Yes, if he meets somebody outside, he will try to give Krishna consciousness to that person also, because he does not want to leave anybody. But who is most likely to get Krishna consciousness?
Those who serve more.
Those who come to the temple, those who are visible to the devotees, those who are respectful to the devotees. A person who's very harsh, brash, and disrespectful, you would naturally not want to approach him to give him Krishna consciousness. There is this certain, inhibition in us that, okay, maybe not him, because this person is very rude, very brash. But if a person is nicely behaved, decent person, you yourself will get attracted to give that person Krishna consciousness. And this is how it works. Is that okay?
Yeah, thank you so much, Madhavi. So it works both ways. Devotees approach and the inclination, how much they are inclined and willing, that also works.
Because Krishna does not take away the free will of anyone, any jiva. However pious you may be, if the free will is not there to accept Krishna, nobody can really do anything. That free will he does not play around with. That free will is a jiva's choice. Maybe in goodness. And we also hear that sometimes mode of goodness can also become an hindrance, because those people normally have a very, smooth life. They're satisfied and they don't really see the reason why we should take up to Krishna consciousness. So that also may be the case in certain cases. But at a higher percentage is of those people who are pious, and devotees normally approach such people more often than others. Is that okay?
Yeah, very nice, Mother. Thank you.
Mandaleshwar Prabhu, you want to read or you
Yes.
have a question?
Oh, 1 minute, Mataji. One question is there. It is saying that Mahasevam Deva, only pure duty. If we can't serve pure duties, if there is door is not open for the spiritual world. Means only Maharaj or pure duties means how can we what that that means?
Maharaj or not Maharaj, these are varnashram distinctions. Pure devotee could be very well a grihastha, living right next to your house. Devotion is a matter of the heart. It is not the matter of the dress or ashram. Pure devotee is not a badge that only sannyasis or maharajas are pure devotees. They very well may be. But also a grihastha living right next to your house may be a pure devotee. So it is how we actually understand who's a pure devotee is by observing how their actions are. Actions speak louder than words. You just by observing a person for some time, you can actually understand. And even if you don't understand, if you think, oh, everybody looks like a pure devotee here, so then we pray to Krishna for guidance, and he's sitting in the heart as the super soul will tell you that this person is somebody you can approach, and this person you probably should stay away. So Krishna consciousness is extremely scientific. It's extremely scientific. It works beautifully. There is no chance, no question of chance here. It is only Krishna consciousness is an internal process. It is a matter of the heart. It has got nothing to do with your appearance. It has got nothing to do with ashram. It has got nothing to do with your varna. You could be a Shudra and a pure devotee. And you could be a Brahmana and not a pure devotee. So one has to be very careful. Yes, Maharajas may be pure devotees. Maybe most of them are pure devotees, but pure devotion is not limited to a certain varna or ashram. Is that okay?
One more, Mataji. That without serving our Maharaj, we could not please Krishna. It's also mentioned in some scriptures, Mataji, that because our mood is to serve means our Guru Maharaj, what instruction he has given, indirectly we are serving our means Krishna in behalf of that. It's right or?
Yeah. So, okay. So when you were saying Maharaj, you meant Guru Maharaj, Guru. Okay. I thought that you're meaning sannyasis. Yes, Guru is our connection to Krishna. Because he is the giver of everything. He's the giver of Nam. Nam is the holy name. And connection to Krishna comes by our Nam Nishtha. And if there is no Guru Nishtha, there is no Nam Nishtha, because he is the giver of Nam. So yes, he is our connection to Krishna.
Okay,
that's how it works.
Okay.
Okay, 29. Who's reading? Maybe somebody can just volunteer and read.
Mataji, may I?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Jara marana mokshaya mama ashritya yatanti he te brahma tad vidhu krishnam adhyatmam karma chakilam. Intelligent persons who are endeavoring for liberation from old age and death take refuge in me in devotional service. They are actually Brahman because they entirely know everything about transcendental activities.
Yeah, so here he is talking about the fourth kind of Sakam devotee. We have heard about 3 kinds of Sakam devotees earlier in this chapter. Who are those?
Arto, Arthati, Jigyasu, Jnani.
Yes. Jnani is not a Sakam devotee, right? Krishna makes that distinction that the other three are Sakam devotees. And here's the fourth kind of Sakam devotee whose desire is what? To actually endeavor for liberation, to become liberated from this material world, that desire is there. So he's also a kind of a Sakam devotee. And Prabhupada in the purport says that birth, death, and old age and diseases affect this material body, but not the spiritual body. There is no birth, death, old age, and disease for the spiritual body. So one who attains a spiritual body becomes one of the associates of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and engages in eternal devotional service is really liberated. Aham Brahmasmi, I'm spirit. It is said that one should understand that he is Brahman, spirit soul. This Brahman conception of life is also in the devotional service as described in this verse. The pure devotee are transcendently situated on the Brahman platform. We'll hear about this, Brahma Bhuta Prasannatma na Shochati na Kankshati, that a pure devotee is situated above the Brahma Bhuta platform. He is actually Gunatit. He is not under the three modes of material nature. And then Prabhupada is continuing, and they know everything about transcendental activities. So then he says in the second paragraph, but those who are worshippers of demigod never reach the Supreme Lord in his supreme planet. Even the less intelligent Brahman realized persons cannot reach the supreme planet of Krishna known as Golok Vrindavan. Only persons who perform activities in Krishna consciousness, Mam Ashritya, are actually entitled to be called Brahman because they are actually endeavoring to reach the Krishna planet. Such persons have no misgivings about Krishna and thus they are fractally Brahman. So here he's talking about that these, although these people who are trying to get liberated, they have transcended. One cannot reach Brahma Jyoti without transcending the three gunas. They have transcended, but they are not intelligent. Why? Because they are, Prabhupada is saying they are not intelligent because what are they striving to do? They are striving to merge in the Brahma Jyoti or aspire for one of the liberations. But a pure devotee of the Lord is actually on the Brahman platform because he is trying to serve the Lord. Here the desire of this person who may seem very intelligent is not to serve the Lord. He does not want to serve the Lord. He just wants to be liberated. So whatever his actions are actually determined by this desire that I want liberation. Whereas a Krishna conscious devotee, his actions are determined by the desire to serve Krishna, to actually establish a relationship with Krishna, relationship based on love and service. But here, this person is not trying to do that. So that is why such a person is known as a Sakam devotee, because he's approaching Krishna, he's actually taking to a transcendental path with a desire for liberation. So here, Krishna is using some words. He's using the word Brahman, and then he's also talking about karma. He's everything about transcendental activities. And he's also talking about adhyatma. And we will see that Arjuna will pick on these terms and he will ask more about these terms in the beginning of 8th chapter. So Krishna has talked about adhyatma, Brahman, and karma in this shloka. Now we can go to the last shloka of this chapter. Somebody can read.
Mataji, can I read?
Please go ahead.
साधु भूतादि देवं माम साधि यज्ञं च ये विदुः प्रयाण काले अपि च मामते विदुर्य युक्त चेतसः. Translation: those in full consciousness of me who know me, the Supreme Lord, to be the governing principle of the material manifestation of the demigods and of all methods of sacrifice, can understand and know me, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, even at the time of death.
Yeah. So here Krishna is talking that I am the governing principle behind the material manifestation. I am the governing principle behind the demigods. I am the governing principle behind all the yagyas. And so what he's saying, that a person who understands this and what such a person will do, he will approach me. He will approach me and he will know me even at the time of death. So he's basically talking about how the desires of the souls of all classes of men, all classes of jiva can be directed towards Krishna. Some may know him as the governing principle of the material manifestation. That means as the universal form or Virat Purusha of the demigods. That means as the Adi Daivam, and as of all the methods of sacrifice, which is Adi Yagyam. So these are some of the terms that Krishna is using. And he's basically, what he's referring to is that the potency of knowing and remembering him at the time of death. Whether you know him as this or that, if one remembers him at the time of death, then what will happen? He's saying that one can know me and understand me if one sees him like this. So he's explained in this verse the potency of knowing and remembering at the time of death through understanding him as Adi Bhuta, which means the governing principle behind the material manifestation, Adi Deva, governing principle of the demigods, and Adi Yagya, governing principles of different sacrifices. So Prabhupada then talks about this in his first paragraph. Persons acting in Krishna consciousness are never deviated from the path of entirely understanding the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the transcendental association of Krishna consciousness, one can understand how the Supreme Lord is the governing principle of the material manifestation and even of the demigods. Gradually, by such transcendental association, one becomes convinced of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And at the time of death, such a Krishna conscious person can never forget Krishna. So if one understands him, then one slowly comes to the point of remembering Krishna even at the time of death. And Prabhupada says, now he is talking about giving, in a way, like a summary. The 7th chapter particularly explains how one can become a fully Krishna conscious person. The beginning of Krishna consciousness is association of persons who are Krishna conscious. Such association is spiritual and puts one directly in touch with the Supreme Lord. And by his grace, one can understand Krishna to be the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then further down, he says, by gradual development of Krishna consciousness in good association, the living entity can understand that due to forgetfulness of Krishna, he has become conditioned by the laws of material nature. He can also understand that this human form of life is an opportunity to regain Krishna consciousness and that it should be fully utilized to attain the causeless mercy of the Supreme Lord. Okay, so basically, just to give a short recap, so this particular chapter talks about 6 types of devotees, right? 4 sakam, 3 were mentioned earlier, and 1 sakam devotee is the one who's trying for liberation. And it also talks about Kevala Bhakta, Ananya Bhakta, and also talks about Jnani, right? So this chapter talks about 4 kinds of Sakam Bhakta, talks about Jnanis and Ananya Bhaktas. So this is the distinction Krishna is making in this particular chapter. He's making us see these six kind of devotees from a different angle of vision. Is that okay? Thus end the Bhaktivedanta purpose to the 7th chapter of the Srimad Bhagavad Gita in the matter of knowledge of the Absolute. Anandita Mataji?
Mataji, I have a question in 7.29. Can I ask?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Yeah. The translation says that intelligent persons who are endeavoring for liberation from old age and death take refuge in me in devotional service. So this line sounds as if it's saying for impersonalist. And the next line, they are actually Brahman because they know entirely about everything about Krishna. So the second line speaks about pure devotional service. So I just wanted to understand for whom this has been spoken.
This is basically talking about those people who have transcended the modes, but whose desire is one of the liberations. They have transcended the modes, but their desire is for liberation. It could be Sayujya, it could be Sarokya, but one of the liberations. That is why Prabhupada in the purport talks about that such people cannot reach Goloka Vrindavan. Only a Krishna conscious person can reach Krishna's planet. And he should actually be called Brahman because he's trying to reach the planet of Krishna. Is that okay?
So they are basically impersonalists. And they want to merge or take.
Not necessarily impersonalists, because they could be vying for Salokya Mukti or Sarupya Mukti.
5 muktis.
Yeah, so it's not just Sayujya Mukti. So not necessarily impersonalists. But devotees who are approaching bhakti or who are approaching devotional service with a desire for liberation.
Okay, Mataji, thank you.
So that's why they are called Sakam Bhaktas, because there is a desire. And whereas pure devotional service is ahetuki apratihata yayatma suprasidati, that there should be no desire for any personal gain and it should be uninterrupted. But since there is a desire for liberation, that's why this particular person is known as Sakam Bhakta. Does that help?
Yes, Mataji. So they want any of the 5 muktis. Not,
It could be any of the 5
Sayujya.
muktis. It could be any of the
Okay,
5 muktis. Okay, let's start with chapter 8. And as we discussed in chapter 7 at the end, 29th and 30th verse, we heard that Krishna used some terms. And now Arjuna is going to start this chapter by asking about these particular terms. Harshita, you want to read or you have a question?
Hare Krishna Maji, I have a question.
Okay.
Maji, what is the meaning of they are actually Brahman? Why they? Everyone is actually Brahman. Brahman is translated as spirit soul. So everyone is actually Brahman. So why? What does it mean that they are actually?
That they're
why-
acting on Brahma platform. What is the Brahma platform? That I am a spirit soul and I'm meant to serve Krishna because I'm his part and parcel. They're actually, we are all Brahma, but we're not acting on Brahma platform. Only a Krishna conscious devotee is acting on the platform of Brahma because he understands not only that I'm a spirit soul, even impersonalists understand I'm a spirit soul, but they have no desire to serve the Lord. So acting on Brahma platform means understanding one's constitutional position and acting on that level.
And
Okay.
and Maharaj, one more, that you said that these persons, Sakam Bhaktis who are desiring liberation, they can desire Sayujya also and any of the other 4 also. So Sayujya ones are the impersonalists, but impersonalists have no connection with devotional service. But here it is mentioned that they take refuge in me in devotional service. So that means they Sayujya wale nahi honge na?
Actually, we'll come to know in the 8th chapter, there's a brief mention where Krishna mentions that and Prabhupada explains that none of the processes, whether it's karma yoga, whether it's jnana yoga, whether it's ashtanga yoga, can reach its culmination if there is not some bhakti involved in it. For any process, for one to attain success in any of these processes, some amount of bhakti has to be there. And that bhakti is what results in one achieving the success. Without it, one cannot achieve the success in whatever process there may be. So in that sense, we can understand that such a devotee may even be even be anxious to get Sayujya Mukti. It is possible.
Thank you, Maharaj. Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Okay, so I'll just give you a breakup of 8th chapter, how this particular chapter is constructed. So in the first 4 verses, Krishna will answer the questions of Arjuna. He'll answer most of it except for the last one about Prayana Kale. Last question is Krishna is going to take almost the entire chapter to answer the last question. Rest of the questions of Arjuna, he'll answer in 2 verses, but last question of Arjuna, he will answer throughout the chapter. And 5 to 8 verses, Krishna is going to talk about how it is important to remember him at the time of death. And if one remembers him, what is the consequence of such remembrance? And from 9 to 13, he's going to talk about how a Yoga Mishra Bhakta, how a devotee who thinks that he needs to practice certain practices of yoga, of Ashtanga yoga, how such a person remembers Krishna. And 17 to 22, he makes a distinction between the material world and the spiritual world. And 23 to 28, he'll talk about supremacy of pure devotional service to attain him. Yeah. So if we notice in Bhagavad Gita, the way the flow works, pretty much towards the end of each chapter, he lays the foundation for the next chapter. And we'll see that even in the 8th chapter, that he'll end the chapter with pure devotional service, because 9th chapter is most confidential knowledge. 9th chapter is pure devotional service. So that's how he ends, and that's how he continues the discussion. And here also we are seeing that the discussion in the 8th chapter is going to begin from how he ended the 7th chapter. Okay. So somebody can start reading.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Arjuna Vacha Kim Tad Brahma Kim Adhyatmam Kim Karma Purushottama Adi Bhutam Ka Kim Proktam Adi Devam Kim Uchyate.
Translation.
Arjuna inquired, oh my Lord, O Supreme Person, what is Brahman? What is the self? What are the fruity activities? What are in this material manifestation? And what are the demigods? Please explain me in this me.
So here he's asking 5 questions. First is, what is Brahman? Second, what is the self? Third, what is the fruitive activities? Fourth, what is the material manifestation? And what are the demigods? So the words that he's using are Adhyatma. First he's asking Brahma, then Adhyatma, then Karma, then Adi Bhutam, and Adi Daivam, because these are the terms that Krishna had used at the end of 7th chapter. So why is he asking these questions? So Prabhupada kind of explains this. But Brahma, why is he asking who's Brahma? Because Brahma is a word that is used by Krishna also in some context for a jiva and in some context for the super soul. So he wants to know that when you're talking about Brahma, are you talking about jiva or are you talking about the super soul? And then the second he's asking is, what is the self? Adhyatma. So does it pertain to the gross body or does it pertain to the subtle body? So he wants to know that when you're talking Adhyatma, what does it pertain to? And then he also wants to know, what is this material manifestation? That how is this Maya coming into being? When you say that, when you're talking about Adi Bhutam, what does it really mean? And then he says, and what is Adi Devam? Adi Devam means, are you talking about the demigods or are you going to talk about the Virat Purusha? So Arjun wants to clarify this, because Adi words, prefix Adi means over and above. So he wants to know that when you're saying Adi Devam, are you meaning demigods or over and above demigods, the Virat Purusha? So that is why Arjuna is here asking this question. And Prabhupada in the purport says that in this chapter, Lord Krishna answers different questions from Arjuna, beginning with what is Brahman. The Lord also explains karma, fruitive activities, devotional service, yoga principles, and devotional service in its pure form. So, and we also see that Arjuna is addressing Krishna as Purushottama. So Prabhupada gave a lecture on this particular verse. I don't remember the year. And he talked about 3 kinds of Purusha. That Arjuna here is talking about Purushottam, which means Krishna. There is Purusha Madhyam, which means the super soul. And there is Purushadhama, which means the jiva. So he's addressing, when he's saying Purushottam, he's very clear who am I addressing and who I want to answer these questions. I don't want the super soul to answer. I want Krishna standing as Purushottam to answer these questions. Okay. And then Prabhupada says in the purport, the Srimad Bhagavatam explains that the supreme truth, absolute truth, is known as Brahma, Paramatma, and Bhagavan. Brahmeti, Paramatmeti, Bhagavaniti, Shabdate. In addition, the living entity, the individual soul, is also called Brahman. Arjuna inquires about Atma, which refers to body, soul, and mind. According to Vedic dictionary, Atma refers to mind, body, soul, and sometimes even senses also. So Arjun wants to make sure that, when you're saying something, I should understand it the way you mean it to. And Prabhupada then says, Arjuna has addressed Supreme Lord as Purushottama, Supreme Person, which means he's putting these questions not simply to a friend, but to the Supreme Person, knowing him to be the Supreme Authority. Okay, so he's going to continue with questions in the second verse also. So somebody can read the second verse.
Shall I read, Madhu?
Yeah, please go ahead.
प्रायः काले च कथं ज्ञेयो असि नित्य आत्मभिः. Who is the Lord of sacrifice and how does he live in the body? O Madhusudan. And how can those engaged in devotional service know you at the time of death?
Yeah. So here he's asking three more questions. Who is the Lord of sacrifice? Who's Adi Yagya? Who is the beneficiary? Because Prabhupada explains that in the Vedic Yagya, sometimes it's Indra and sometimes it's Vishnu. So he's saying, he basically wants to know that when you're using this term Adi Yagya, who are you referring to? Are you referring to Indra or are you referring to Vishnu? And how does he live in the body? And this is the seventh question. And eighth question is that one who's engaged in devotional service, how can such a person know you at the time of death? Prayana kale. How can such person remember you or know you at the time of death? And Prabhupada explains that here he's addressing Krishna as Madhusudana. Why? Because we have heard this description before also in Bhagavad Gita, that Madhu was a demon and Krishna acquired that name when he killed that demon Madhu. So here Krishna is being referred to as Madhusudana because Arjun is basically trying to say that my doubts are like demons. All these doubts have arisen in my mind and they're like demons. And since you have killed Madhu demon, you are fully equipped to kill these doubts in my mind. So that's why he's addressing him as Madhusudana. Now, Prabhupada in the third paragraph says, the word prayan kale in this verse is very significant because whatever we do in life will be tested at the time of death. Arjun is very anxious to know of those who are constantly engaged in Krishna consciousness. What should be their position at that final moment? At the time of death, all the bodily functions are disrupted and the mind is not in proper condition. Thus disturbed by the bodily situation, one may not be able to remember the Supreme Lord. And then Prabhupada quotes this prayer by Maharaj Kulashekar, where he says, Krishna Todiya Pada Pankaja Panjarantam, right? Where he says that, right now my mind is healthy and I can think about you. So may I die right now so that I can focus on you. So, and then he says that at the time of death, if my mind is very disturbed, how am I going to think about you? And this is what Prabhupada is saying, that the reason that Arjun's question is extremely pertinent because the main activity of a devotee is to cultivate remembrance of Krishna. That is the main activity. We'll even read in NOD, when we read, Rupa Goswami gives a very nice quotation. He says, Smartavyo Satatam Vishnu Vismartavo Najatusche, right? That is the rule, which is the principle. And rest of the rules are Kinkara. They are the servants of this rule. What is that rule? Always remember Krishna, never forget Krishna. So Rupa Goswami is also giving us that rule. And Krishna is exactly talking about that. And Arjun is actually asking about that, how to remember him. And Krishna is going to talk about that. Remembrance of Krishna. A devotee, the entire life of a devotee is actually geared towards this, how to cultivate remembrance of Krishna at the time of death. So next, let's see how Krishna starts answering this question. Somebody can read.
Krishna. Shri
Yeah.
Bhagavan Vacha Aksharam Brahma Paramam Svabhavo Adhyatmam Uchyate Bhuta Bhavo Karo Visarga Karma Sangitaha. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, the indestructible, transcendental living entity is called Brahman, and his eternal nature is called Adhyatma, the self. Actions pertaining to the development of the material bodies of the living entities is called karma, or fruitive activities.
Thank you. So now Krishna is starting to answer the question. So one of the questions that Arjuna had is, what is Brahma? So here Krishna is making it clear that Brahma is Jiva, that indestructible spirit soul. And he also makes a distinction that the super soul is Para Brahma. So here when he's talking about Brahman, he's actually talking about Jiva. And then he says that his eternal nature is called Adhyatma. A Jiva has acquired a certain Swabhav because of his interaction in this material world. And these interactions are stored in the mind as impressions. And they determine our nature. And this is what we carry from one body to another by the agency of the subtle body. Right? So this is what is Adhyatma, the Swabhav of a Jiva, the nature of a Jiva, and actions pertaining to the development of the material body. So he's basically saying that karma in this technical sense specifically refers to the journey of a Jiva to the heavenly planets, his return to earth, his acquiring a human body, and this entire cycle whereby he remains entrapped in this material world. That is what karma is. Karma is all those actions which ensure that a jiva is trapped in this material world. Right? And in the purport, Prabhupada says, the constitutional, this is the first paragraph, the constitutional position of the living entity is different from the position he takes in the material world. In material consciousness, his nature is to try to be the Lord of matter. But in spiritual consciousness, Krishna consciousness, his position is to serve the Supreme. When the living entity is in material consciousness, he has to take various bodies in the material world, and that is called karma. So karma is that specific activity which leads to development of material body. And then Prabhupada talks about different species and how, according to karma, a jiva travels in different species. He sometimes goes up, sometimes goes down. So it is all because of karma. And then he quotes from Chandogya Upanishad, where he talks about the Vedic sacrificial process. So I would like to share, Prabhupada explains this a little bit in his purport in the next paragraph. Let me share a screen. Is this visible to everyone?
Yes, Mataji.
Yes, Mataji.
So when he is talking about the Vedic process of sacrifice, this is what he's actually talking about. Yeah, so he's in the next paragraph, he says, in the process of sacrifice, the living entity makes specific sacrifice to attain specific heavenly planets. Because a living entity has a faith in certain kind of sacrifice, that is seen as an offering, and the sacrificial altar is the heavenly planet. He goes to the heavenly planet, and when the merit of sacrifice is exhausted, so when heavenly planet means normally it is equated to the moon, that one goes to the moon and actually tastes somarasa there. So one goes to the heavenly planet, becomes enjoyer on the moon, and then what happens? The pious credits, the merit of sacrifice is exhausted, and the living entity returns to the earth in the form of rain. In the form of rain, and what happens? This rain falls on earth and then takes the form of grains. This living entity has fallen in the form of rain to earth and then enters the grain, this particular living entity, and the grains are eaten by a man and transformed into semen, which impregnates a woman, and thus the living entity once again attains a human form to perform sacrifice and so repeat the same cycle. So this is the cycle of sacrifice. The faith in Vedic scriptures, because there are a lot of karmakandi activities in Vedic scriptures. One, actually, because of the faith, one performs Panchagni Vidya, and one goes to heavenly planets and enjoys on the moon. And then when the pious credits are over, then one takes the form of cloud and falls on this earth as rain. And when a jiva falls on the earth and enters the grain, and then that grain is eaten by a man, and then when the man impregnates a woman, and then the jiva returns in the human form again to perform sacrifices. Okay, so this is what Prabhupada is talking about. This is basically how karma works. When he's giving this example from Chandogya Upanishad, he's talking about how the karma works. Mandaleshwar Prabhu, you have a question?
Yes, Mataji, that grain to grain you told Mataji, it's okay, but after grain, its human form is taking place. How that only human animals also can eat the grains? Right?
Yeah, but he's talking about how a human, how a jiva comes back into human form to perform sacrifices again. So that grain is when it's eaten by a man, it turns into semen. And then when he impregnates a woman, that spirit soul through the agency of semen enters the body of a woman and then ultimately comes out as a child in the human form. Here he's in that Upanishad, it is being explained for the human form of life. Anandita Mataji?
Yes, Mataji, I had the same question. Like, only this is for only humans or animals like that. So you answer. Okay.
Harshita?
Mataji, I wanted to ask you, this eternal nature, his eternal nature is called the self. So I don't understand. The eternal nature is it's the tendency of serving Krishna. No, the eternal nature is service. So when in conditioned state, that's
In the conditioned state, it is covered by impressions on the mind. But in the pure stage, it is Jivara Sarupaya Krishna Das, but not in the conditioned state. Conditioned state, the eternal nature is actually covered by different impressions.
So in
So
condition, internal nature means what?
Eternal nature. Eternal nature of a jiva is covered in the conditioned state. By the process of bhakti, what do? You uncover this covering that has come over our eternal nature. Right now, because we are conditioned, we don't realize we are meant to serve Krishna. We are Krishna Nityadas. We don't realize that, right? But as we take on to the process of bhakti, then slowly, I'm sure when you started, since then, there has been some realization that I'm not really meant to enjoy independently of Krishna. I'm meant to serve him. And as this covering is washed out, this eternal nature is going to become manifest.
So this eternal nature is actually Jivera Sarup.
Yeah, Jivara Sarupa, Krishna Nityadas. But he's talking about that Brahma is Jiva and Adhyatma is his eternal nature, which right now is covered by different impressions. Is that okay?
Yes. And Mataji, in this chart you showed, so one is that human form evolves through various plants, then aquatics, then animals and so on. Then he comes to human. But here it is said grain directly to human.
Yeah, it is shown for a person who has gone to heavenly planets by performing certain sacrifices. Such a person, when he returns from the heavenly planets, he always comes back as a human form. When somebody comes back from the heavenly planets, the form that one comes back is human form. He acquires the human form first. Okay?
And I'm sorry, like it's from after the heavenly planets, he comes to cloud, right? So, but how is it possible? The cloud is non-living, Jiva is living. How can he?
He comes in the form of cloud, stores the raindrops. A cloud has water, right? Those water drops. So he comes back in the form of a raindrop. When a jiva drops, he drops as a raindrop.
But raindrop is also non-living.
So jiva, when jiva, all raindrops don't have jivas, but jivas, when he drops from the heavenly planets, he drops in the form of rain. Okay. Rishabh Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Mataji, I don't understand the word Atma.
I can't hear you, Prabhu.
The word Adhyatma, that I did not understand. It's the nature of the psychophysical nature of the body or the nature of the pure soul.
Soul.
Pure soul.
It is see, Adhyatma here, when he's talking about, Krishna is making a distinction that Brahman means a jiva soul and Adhyatma means his constitutional position or his eternal nature. So Prabhupada is mentioning that the eternal swabhav of a jiva is actually covered by different impressions acquired from different lifetimes. It's in its pure form. It is Jivara Sarup hai Krishnera Nityadas. But in this material world, it does not exist in the pure form. In the material world, it exists based on what kind of impressions and sanskars we have acquired in different lifetimes. Okay.
Thank you.
Mukund Priya Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji, Pranam. Mataji, I have heard this earlier also, but I couldn't understand the jiva attains certain nature and impression from. Is this a sanskar? Mataji, can you elaborate on this a little more so that I can understand better?
Yeah, I'll try. What you do in this life, what your activities are in this life, are forming an impression on your mind. You agree to that? Yes,
Mataji, but in this lifetime, we don't remember anything what had happened
do not
in the past.
remember, but it is getting stored in the mind. You may not remember everything, but it is getting stored in the mind. And that the proof of it is that sometimes you'll get this memory, which is like 20 years back. You're not even trying to remember. But suddenly some piece of memory will come. And then you'll realize that, oh yeah, I remember this happened 20 years ago. But you're not really trying to remember it. Does it happen?
So Mataji, who control it? Then it's a nature who control all this forgetfulness and recalling of all these
Forgetfulness and
impressions.
remembrance is controlled by Krishna. But all these memories in this material world are stored where? In the subtle body, in the mind. So whatever you do is actually stored in the subtle body. And these impressions form our desire and also form our consciousness. If you go to the temple every day and you chant your rounds, then the impressions that is going to be formed on your consciousness and the desire that you'll have is most probably of a devotee. But if you indulge in sinful activities or you indulge in sense gratificatory activities, then what will be the impression on your mind? That I want to do sense gratification. That is my goal, right? So it is explained in Bhagavatam also, karmana deva netrena, that depending on the impressions on the mind, the karmas which actually determine the impressions on the mind, one gets the next body, one prepares the next body. Right?
Okay. But you say that in that case, the old impression will fade away by the time then we acquire the new one?
Some remain. Those old impressions have determined the nature we have in this lifetime. All of us are born with a certain nature. Where is that coming from? It is coming from old impressions. And some may be so deep-rooted that they may be coming from many lifetimes. So it's not that we have impressions only of one lifetime. So as you understand that gross body changes every time we die, and then the body dies and we get a new gross body. But subtle body does not change. Subtle body has been there ever since we came into the material existence. This subtle body is carrying us from one gross body to another, to another, to another, to another. So you can understand the power the subtle body holds over us, because it has been accompanying the soul from the beginning of the soul's existence in this material world.
So, Mataji, then it's not only the human life impression which we have. We have the all.
Yes, we have all impressions, some stored somewhere in the mind. And that is why externally it is very easy to become a devotee, to, shave your head or start wearing tilak or start, wearing dhoti kurta or sari or, neck beads. It's easy. But internally to become a devotee takes intense practice because of these impressions, which are so deep rooted on our mind, on our subtle body. That is where the battle begins.
So, Mataji, what is a practical way of dealing with all this?
The more Prabhupada says, the more impressions we put off devotional activities, the more impressions that get stored in our mind, which are devotional in nature, and then more and more things that we remember, more and more sanskars that we remember would be devotional. So what we have to, just like Prabhupada gives an example, that if there is a cup with ink in it and you want to get rid of that ink, and if you start pouring milk, initially that milk would look blue in color. But if you keep pouring milk, after some time, that cup would only contain milk, or that ink would have washed out. Similar is the state of our heart. There are many impressions, but if we keep putting devotional impressions on it, then we won't necessarily carry those past impressions for too long. Is that okay?
Yes, Mataji, thank you so much. Mataji, one more thing, that the one point you have mentioned just now, that Jiva dropped out from the planet of moon. So it's not the Swargaloka and these kind of lokas, it's especially the moon?
See, Swargaloka, moon is one planet in Swargaloka. So in the Chandogya Upanishad, it is mentioned as moon planet, but could be any other planet in the Swargaloka as well.
Okay, understood. Thank you, Mataji.
Okay, let's move to 4th. Mukunda Priya Mataji, you want to read?
Yes, Mataji. Adhibhutam shiro bhava purushascha adhidevatam adhiyapno ahame dehe deha vritamvara. O best of embodied being, the physical nature, which is constantly changing, is called adhibhuta, the material manifestation. The universal form of the Lord, which includes all the demigods, like those of the sun and moon, is called Adhideva. And I, the Supreme Lord, represented as a super soul in the heart of every embodied being, am called Adhigyana, the Lord of sacrifice.
Yeah, so here he's answering 3 more questions. What is Adibhut? What is Adidev? And what is Adi Yagya? So he's saying Adibhut means the material manifestation, which includes the material body. And Adidev he's talking about is the universal form of the Lord, the Virat Purusha. And Adi Yagya is the super soul, Paramatma in the heart, who is the beneficiary of all the yagyas. So Prabhupada says the physical nature is constantly changing. Material bodies generally pass through 6 stages. They are born, they grow, they remain for some duration, they produce some byproducts, they dwindle, and then they vanish. This physical nature is called Adi Bhuta. It is created at a certain point and will be annihilated at a certain point. And then he says that the universal form of the Supreme Lord, which includes all the demigods and their different planets, is Adi Daiva. And present in the body along with the individual soul is a super soul, a plenary representation of Lord Krishna. The super soul is called Paramatma or Adi Yagya and is situated in the heart. And then Prabhupada later on says that the super soul is basically the super soul, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, seated beside the individual soul, is the witness of individual soul activities and is the source of soul's various types of consciousness. So when he says the various types of consciousness of the soul, it means basically Sushupti, Turya, Swapna, and Jagrat. These are the 4 kinds of consciousness of a soul. And the super soul actually is responsible and is the source of all these kinds of consciousness. The super soul gives the individual soul an opportunity to act freely and witnesses its activities. The function of all these different manifestations of the Supreme Lord automatically become clarified for the pure Krishna conscious devotee engaged in the transcendental service to the Lord. Then he says the neophyte is advised to contemplate the universal form or Virat Purusha, whose legs are considered the lower planets, whose eyes are considered the sun and the moon, and whose head is considered the upper planetary system. So neophyte, this is not the process for a devotee. This is a process for those who cannot contemplate the transcendental form of the Lord. So they are told to contemplate on the Virat Purusha, that material form which contains the entire material manifestation. And that way they can, when they see something so big, so fantastic, they develop faith in some kind of authority. So universal form is for those people. Okay. So 5 to 9. Now Krishna will talk about the process of Smaranam, how to remember. We remember that Arjun's one question was how to remember at the time of death, Prayana Kale. So now he's going to start answering that question. Rest all of the questions he's answered very shortly in 2 verses. But this last question is the one on which he's going to focus throughout this chapter. Anandita Mataji?
Mataji, you just spoke about 4 types of consciousness. So Susupti, Jagrat, and what 2?
Swapna and Turya.
Okay, thank you. So, okay.
They are in different modes, like Jagrat. Jagrat is called in the mode of goodness. And then Swapna is in the mode of passion. And Sushupti is in the mode of ignorance because it means deep sleep. And Turiya, which means transcendental state. So depending on the different modes, different consciousness, various types of consciousness is determined.
Okay, so till now I could remember that I knew about 3 because Prabhupada used to mention Jagrat, Susupti, and deep sleep and like that. So Turya is for the transcendental.
Yes, yes. It comes in Bhagavatam. Okay.
Mataji, you mentioned in the first or I think second slok regarding Purushottam, and you mentioned that it is one of the Srila Prabhupada's lectures. So Purushottam is Krishna, Purush Madhyam is Super Soul, and Purush Adham
is Jiva.
I heard it.
Yeah, Purush Adham is Jiva.
Okay. Thank you, Master.
Fifth shloka, who's reading? Please go ahead.
Antakale cha mameva smaran muktava kalevaram ya prayati samadbhavam yadinasyatra samshayaha. And whoever at the end of his life quits his body, remembering me alone, at once attains my nature. Of this there is no doubt.
Yeah, so in the previous shloka, he basically talked about if one sees Krishna as Adhibhuta, that the governing principle behind the material manifestation, or governing principle behind the universal form, or as the governing principle behind the Adi Yagya, or Paramatma. And if we worship Krishna as that, one worships him as Adibhuta, Adi Yagya, then what happened? What will happen? Even at the time of death, one can remember Krishna. So he's basically talking about how even if one does not really remember, worship him as Krishna, as the Supreme Personality of Godhead, by worshipping these forms, one can remember him at the time of death. And one will have different destinations depending on what they meditate on. And now he's going to talk about remembering him as Krishna. So he's saying that whoever quits his body at the end of his life, remembering him alone attains his nature. What is his nature? Shuddha Sattva, Satchidanand. So that person becomes Satchidanand, means he attains his original spiritual form. So, and then he's saying of this, there is no doubt. So basically our thoughts, our desires will determine our remembrance at the time of death. What have we focused on throughout our life? That is what is going to determine what we'll remember at the time of death. So it is mentioned that at the time of death, a living entity kind of sees like a movie, a flashback of everything that has happened in his life. And this movie moves very quickly. And depending on what the jiva's desire is or where the consciousness is, one may get stuck to a particular scene in that movie. One may actually get stuck at one particular scene, and that will determine where you will go. The whole life is moving like a movie, and then depending on one's desire and one's consciousness, one may get attracted to a certain thing, and that's where one will go. So, and in this purport, this is also known as Hare Krishna Mahamantra purport, because in this one purport, Prabhupada quotes the Hare Krishna Mahamantra fully twice. And basically what he's trying to say is that if one practices the chanting, regularly chanting the holy name of the Lord, that one may be able to remember Krishna at the time of death. Because what he's trying to imply here is that the mind is not stable. At the time of death, the mind is not stable. But if one is in the habit of constantly chanting the holy name, then one would be able to still do that even if mind is not properly situated. Because that years of practice, that habit would carry us through. So Prabhupada says, anyone who quits his body in Krishna consciousness is at once transferred to the transcendental nature of the Supreme Lord. Remembrance of Krishna is not possible for the impure soul who has not practiced Krishna consciousness in devotional service. Very clearly said. Sometimes people say that, oh, you know what, I'll tell somebody to remind me to chant Krishna's name at the time of death. So that is why Krishna is very, very smart. One can't cheat Krishna. He says remembrance. He does not say utterance. He says my remembrance, your consciousness has to be fixed on me, and the consciousness cannot be fixed on Krishna if we have not practiced it throughout our lives. So then he's in Prabhupada says, if one wants to achieve success at the end of his life, the process of remembering Krishna is essential. Therefore, one should chant constantly, incessantly, the Maha Mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Okay. Next, now he's going to continue. Sixth.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Yam yam vapi smaran bhava tayyajat antik kelavram tam tam evakti konteya sada tad bhava bhavitaha. Whatever state of being one remember when he quits his body, O son of Kunti, that state he will attain without fail.
Yeah, so here he's making it very clearly, making very clear, destination is in accordance with what we remember, where our consciousness is. That will determine the destination. And depending on the consciousness, the next body is acquired. And here Prabhupada gives the example of Maharaj Bharat, that at the time of death, he was focusing on the deer. And as a result, even though he had practiced devotional service most of his life, but depending on where the consciousness is, where your thoughts are, where your absorption is, one gets the next body. So there are various lessons to be learned from the life of Maharaj Bharat. So maybe we can have a quick discussion on this. What are some of the lessons from Maharaj Bharat's life?
Maharaj Bharat was practicing alone in the forest. He should have been in the association of some saintly persons.
Devotees, yes, association of devotees, very good. Any other lesson?
Single attachment also make us to bond to this mental life.
The attachment makes us fall down. Yeah, okay. What else? Also, we learn the lesson that at no stage of devotional service can we take it for granted that, now we can't fall down. So one has to be very cautious wherever or whatever stage one may be at. At no stage can we say, now I don't have to worry about it. Now I can just do whatever I feel like. And also, it is also a very good lesson that one should be very careful about executing that devotional rules and regulation of devotional process. When I say rules and regulations, it does not mean 4 regulative principles. It means to always remember Krishna, and that should be the priority, and not become negligent. So it is mentioned in Bhagavatam that Bharat Maharaj became so attached to this deer that even while performing his devotional service, he was remembering this deer. He was not remembering Krishna. He was remembering this deer. So one should be very careful. One should not become negligent. And also that one should always try to remember Krishna, not try to remember anybody else. And this is also an example of misplaced compassion. He took up the service of this deer because of his misplaced compassion, thinking that the deer is going to die if he doesn't take care of him. So a spiritualist has to realize that ultimately the savior is Krishna, not I. And I'm supposed to do it as a duty, not as an absorption. So there are many lessons from this pastime. And Prabhupada says, Prabhupada quotes the example of Bharat Maharaj, and then later on in the purport he says, if one is transcendently absorbed in Krishna's service, then his next body will be transcendental, not material. Therefore, the chanting of Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is the best process for successfully changing one state of being at the end of one's life. So this particular chapter is very interesting because in many purports, Prabhupada will quote the entire Hare Krishna Mahamantra because he wants to stress on this, that we need to chant. We need to chant as if our life depends upon it, because it does. So that is why he's going to be talking about that. Okay. Somebody had a question. Somebody raised a hand.
Yes,
Ananda.
yes, Mataji.
Okay,
But Bharat Maharaj was remembering in next last lifetime also. When he was in deer form also, he could remember. But we are in human form, still we don't remember. What is the...
Yeah, because Bharat Maharaj is no ordinary personality. And this particular pastime is not an ordinary occurrence. It's a shikshaprad pastime. It is meant to deliver certain lessons for a practicing devotee. So Bharat Maharaj is at a very exalted position. So when Krishna has to teach certain lessons to certain people, he uses his pure devotees. He's a pure devotee. So that is why in the next life he remembers, and in the third life also he remembers. Not just as the life in the life of a deer, but also as Jad Bharat he remembers how he wasted 2 lives. So this is not an ordinary, ordinary occurrence.
But only human form can only take us to means spiritual world. Otherwise, we can't go into spiritual world.
In most of the cases, but Krishna Swarat, he can take anybody from any form anywhere he wants. We see that in Chaitanya Leela, that dog Krishna took, Mahaprabhu took that dog directly to the spiritual world. The dog didn't have to come back as a human. So Krishna Swarat, but in maximum cases, that is the rule, that one can only go from the human form of life, but rules are not applicable on Krishna. He can choose to act the way he wants. Okay?
Okay, Mataji, thank you.
Anandita Mataji?
Mataji, you mentioned, again, I would like to discuss more about the 4 types of consciousness. So I often wonder that when we are in deep sleep, being a material body, we feel so much of relaxation, when you have a deep sleep. So I often wonder why it's in ignorance.
Because deep sleep is next to death, in the sense that one does not have any recollection of where one is, what's really going on. You almost like passed out, right? So that is why it is compared to ignorance.
Okay. So you mentioned about that the whole reel goes in the mind at the time of your death. So sometimes we see that it's spot death, you cannot we see even a second, or, the person died. Sometimes many persons are ill and they're suffering for many days. And again, my question is also for those patients, those persons who are in coma, they are not in consciousness for many months or days. How can we understand this?
We can understand in the case of a devotee, even if he's in coma, then Krishna says that Krishna does not say that now you have gone into coma, now forget about it. Krishna is extremely grateful and he reciprocates. So if one has spent his entire life in remembering Krishna, serving Krishna, then even if one, dies in a sudden accident, instant, or even as slips into coma and then dies, Krishna says that I come in the remembrance of my devotee. That devotee doesn't have to remember me. I will come in his remembrance. That is arranged by Krishna himself. And for the others who are non-devotees, then according to their desires, before they slipped into that position, whatever their desire was, whatever their consciousness was, they will get the result accordingly.
Okay, Mataji, thank you for this. Sometimes, often we see we all are the Prabhupada's grandchildren, right? So many of us may feel that we have a deep connection with Prabhupada. So this is totally on the transcendental level.
Yeah, spiritual connections are on transcendental level. You don't know Prabhupada's, you are not connected to Prabhupada's body, right? You are connected to him at a transcendental level, spiritual level, through his teachings, through his pastimes, through different things that different devotees have shared about him, through his purports, through his books.
So maybe we were not connected to him in the past life. Like I often connect myself that I'm born in this year and Prabhupada was there for one more year than that. I don't know whether I was there, I met him or not, or it's like Janme Janme Prabhu saying.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, these eternal connections travel from one lifetime to another. So maybe you saw him in your past life and there was still some bhakti left to be performed. And that's why you got opportunity in this lifetime. Who knows how it worked?
True.
Right? Okay, 7. Somebody may read.
तस्मात् सर्वेषु कालेषु मामनुस्मरयुध्य च मय्यर्पितमनो बुद्धिर्मामे वश्य संशयः. Therefore, Arjun, you should always think of me in the form of Krishna and at the same time carry out your prescribed duty of fighting. With your activities dedicated to me and your mind and intelligence fixed on me, you will attain me without doubt.
Yeah, so Acharya says that Arjun, when he heard the 5th and 6th verse, he thought, oh, this is great. I just have to remember Krishna. I don't have to fight, because that's the instruction he's given, that, one should try to remember me. And so Krishna is making it very clear. Therefore, Arjun, therefore, tasmat, now when you fight, first you remember me. He first says, tasmat sarveshu kaleshu mam anuswara yudhyascha. First remember me and then perform your duty. First he says, mam anusmara, remember me, and then yudhyascha, then fight. So, often devotees wonder that if it's necessary to remember Krishna while they're performing their duties, or whether doing their duty for Krishna is enough. I'm just doing this duty for Krishna, is that enough? So Krishna answers that here, that we should remember Krishna and also do our duty at the same time. So even though it may be difficult to remember Krishna while performing our duty, but it would be far more difficult to remember him at the time of death. If we think that in this material world, while doing what I'm doing, while doing my duties, it's very difficult to remember Krishna. So Prabhupada, in the introduction to Bhagavad Gita, he says that if you think it's difficult now, it is going to be almost impossible at the time of death, because at that time, the body is going to, the life airs would be completely out of balance. There'll be mucus rising, and the throat is going to get all choked up. And there could be body pain, and one won't be able to remember Krishna if one is not used to remembering Krishna throughout his life. So sometimes it may act as an excuse that, I have so many duties, I have this, I have that. How do I remember Krishna? So Prabhupada makes it clear, if you don't do it now, there's no way you can remember him at the time of death. So the practice has to begin now. And this is what Krishna says in the next verse. But we'll start next verse from tomorrow, because it's almost 9:30. I don't want to keep you late. So we'll start from verse number 8 tomorrow. Okay? Thank you all very much for your association. Hare Krishna. All glories to Srila Prabhupada.